Welcome to The Lens, hosted by Catalysis, where we get a glimpse inside healthcare organizations that are transforming to a culture of improvement to deliver continually higher value outcomes for patients, staff, and communities. Visit createvalue.org for more information about Catalysis.
Welcome back to The Lens, everybody. I am your host, Peter Mariahazi, and our co-host again today is Catalysis CEO Carlos Schultz. Now, our guest today joining us is Al Pilong. Al has been in healthcare for over 30 years, and he recently joined Catalysis as a faculty member. He's here with us to share his thoughts on leading a lasting healthcare transformation. Al recently wrote an article for Catalysis titled, "What It Takes to Lead Lasting Healthcare Transformation, Lessons from the Shawshank Redemption." You can find this article under createvalue.org/executive-coaching. Like several other members of our executive coaching faculty, Al brings C-suite level experience to his Catalysis customers. This supports the mission of Catalysis to improve outcomes in healthcare for patients and caregivers. Al, thank you so much for joining us today. Tell our listeners about yourself and a little bit about your background.
Yeah, thanks, Peter. It's great to be here. It's really an honor to be a part of the Catalysis faculty team. And Carlos, great to be with you as well. When I talk about myself, it really starts with family. I am one of 9 children raised by 2 extraordinary parents who, amongst many other things, contributed a great legacy to our family, most importantly, a legacy of faith, which really has been impactful in my life, in my siblings' lives, and really has transformed the way I go about everything that I do. I'm also blessed to be married for 41 years to my high school sweetheart, who I met in 4th grade, believe it or not. She is my life partner who has been the rock behind me, beside me, in front of me all along the way. And so I'm very blessed to have such a rich heritage of marriage. I also have 3 wonderful children, adult children, who are also all married to amazing spouses. So family is really defines me. Faith is a critical part of my life, and then my work. And I've been fortunate over the course of, as you said, over 30 years of my career to be blessed to serve in many different organizations in progressive leadership roles. I started my career as a pharmacist in retail pharmacy, then hospital pharmacy, moved into pharmacy management, and then executive management into the C-suite, where I had the privilege of working in a number of organizations from Delaware to New York to Michigan and to Virginia, and have worked around some amazing leaders, amazing teams, amazing people. And I'm thrilled now that I'm retired as a healthcare executive to be part of the Catalysis team as a member of the faculty. So thanks again for having me.
Al, while we've had guests on the Lens in the past reference authors, you have a distinct honor of being the first to reference a movie nominated for 7 Academy Awards, The Shawshank Redemption. So I want to thank you for that cultural connection. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it's movies. I love movies, and I think we can learn a lot from leadership characters, and this is a good example of it.
And Al, in the article, one of your first points regarding the kind of leadership necessary to sustain transformation is that leaders are modest, quiet, self-effacing. These qualities tie to a behavior Catalysis emphasizes in all of its work, which is humility. Why is this one aspect of a leader's behavior so important for transformation sustainability?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, there's been a lot written about humility, about servant leadership, about what it takes to be an effective leader in an organization where you're trying to create lasting legacy, lasting transformation, and sustainable results. I think humility brings trust and credibility, and I think trust is hugely important for any leader if he is going to be effective or she is going to be effective in leading an organization. I think humble leaders are approachable. I think they're authentic. I think they create an environment where people want to be a part of, and I think that's important. I think it creates less of a me and more of a we sort of connection and situation, and I think that's the kind of place where people want to work, and I think that's what it takes to really create a great organization. But I think that personal humility has to be married to professional will. In the article, I talk about level 5 leadership, and there has to be drive and there has to be ambition to go along with that. There's a sort of a counterbalancing effect that a humble leader can also have drive and ambition, but ambition for the organization, ambition for the outcomes for patients, not for self, not for self glorification or for growth or whatever the case may be. So I think marrying personal humility with professional will, with the appropriate kind of drive, really takes an organization in the direction that it needs to go. And it really creates a kind of environment that people want to be a part of.
So, okay, I can hear the listeners out there going, okay, wait, that's great, but how do you work to get your C-suite team and navigate that so they buy into this important principle?
Well, it's a good question. I think it's like many things when you want your organization, your team to behave in a certain way. The best thing that I have found is to model the way, is to lead with humility, is to lead with the kinds of behaviors and commitments that you want to see from those you're working with, from your team. And so I think modeling is probably the most important thing that you can do. But I think it's also important that there's an environment of accountability, that we understand sort of the goals, the commitments, the values, the behaviors that we all want to see, and that we're held accountable to those behaviors. We're held accountable to those characteristics. That I, as the leader, am accountable. I'm accountable to my board. I'm accountable to my team. I'm accountable to the people that we serve, our patients, to our staff. So I think building that accountability in while you also model the way really can result in an organization that starts to drive a culture that is something that people want to be a part of.
Hi, Eyal. One of the questions that I thought about from the article is, in the article you explain what is your why, and that question is often discussed. It's a question that leaders, those who are really humble and those who really lead with purpose, ask themselves. And how does that help support healthcare leaders in their journey as they enter into that role, or when they are asked from the board, you really need to transform this organization?
Yeah, Carlos, that's an important question. And I think in healthcare, perhaps more than any other industry or any other kind of job, you have the why sort of right in front of you. You have what are we about in healthcare? We're about creating positive outcomes for our patients. We're about creating an environment where people can really excel in the delivery of healthcare. As I would come along to our new employee orientation every month or every other week as a CEO and talk to new leaders or talk to physicians, one of the things I always said to them is we get the opportunity to come alongside people in some of their most vulnerable and difficult situations in their lives and to make a difference, to make a positive difference. And I think that is something, that I try to impress upon people. Healthcare is more than a job, it's a high calling. And so it's an opportunity. I mean, all of us are going to experience healthcare on some form or fashion, right? I mean, as they say, Father Time is undefeated. We all have ultimately healthcare challenges. And when you're on the other side of the delivery model, you expect certain things. You want certain things to be true. You want coordinated, safe, high quality care. And so why we're there is important to remember. And I think it's hard because as you get higher and higher in an organization, sometimes it gets harder to remember the why. But when you have that personal internal drive, and some of that comes from your own personal experience, whether it's you as a patient, in my case, seeing my parents both go through significant health challenges, and sometimes, many times, getting care delivered in the organization that I was a part of or I was leading, that why for great, consistent outcomes rises up and sort of stares you right in the face. And it's really helps drive you forward and helps keep you coming back every day. Because, what we do in healthcare is hard. It's complicated. It's difficult. And so that why is really a grounding force for leaders.
Yeah, in a really key thing that you said is that as you get higher and higher in the organization, sometimes it's very easy to forget about that why.
Mm.
And I will even argue that some leaders don't even get to that realization, like, what is my why? I'm just doing things. Why do you think that is the case?
Well, I think that, as I said, the higher you go in levels of responsibility, I think the farther, well, I don't think the farther away you get from the front lines of where care is delivered and of what the reason is that the organization even exists. I think the other thing is, as a CEO or as a high-level executive leader in healthcare, you have so many things pulling at your attention. You have a board who demands results. You have a community who holds you in high regards and thinks that, you need to, everything that happens in the organization is your responsibility. You have stakeholders like bondholders or shareholders. You have physicians, you have staff, you have other clinicians, you have frontline support. And ultimately, you have the community and the patients that you serve, and they all expect a lot of you. And so, as a leader, it's easy to get distracted. It's easy to bounce back and forth of all of the things that are pulling at you and to forget why you're there in the first place and really be able to prioritize what's most important to the most important people. And that's the patients that you're there to serve and the team that you're surrounded by. So I think it can be hard for leaders, for CEOs to remember that because of the stress and the pressures that they're under. And I think that's where, accountability comes into play, establishing structure, feedback loops, all those things are important.
Thank you. You also mentioned how some leaders eventually rise through the ranks. They get into the roles that they are due to their ability to solve problems or what we call firefight. You mentioned this reliance on those skills of one individual, and sometimes those skills of what we call quote unquote problem solving are more just getting things done at any cost, right? But you're good at doing that, and somebody realizes, hey, if I put Al in charge of something, or I put some other person, and I realize that person has that ability to just solve it, I can keep moving throughout the organization. But sometimes that skill alone doesn't align with lasting success. What do you think that is the case?
Yeah, you're right. And certainly, as I wrote in the article, it's largely connected to my own personal journey in healthcare leadership. I started out as a staff pharmacist in a hospital. I was good at getting things done. I was good at solving problems. I was good at fixing things, creating workarounds. I was good at sort of just being somebody I could be counted on. So I got promoted, became the director of pharmacy. And then it got a little bit more complicated. The people that I used to report to now reported to me, and I had responsibilities for budgets, and I had responsibilities for more horizontal relationships, connecting with nursing and other clinicians and physicians, and it got a little bit more complicated. But it was still good. It was, I was built for this, right? I could make this work. I can solve the problems. I can put out the fires. I could make a budget that would work. All those things. And then somebody says, well, look, he's good. Joint Commission comes, he has the right answers. Let's make him a vice president. So I become vice president. Now I'm dealing with departments that I've never led before. Now it's getting beyond my own personal educational background and experience, my work experience. And now I have to rely on other people. And then, I start to have to learn new habits. And then I become promoted into a broader VP role. And then I get recruited to another organization and I become the president. And then, we grow into a system and I'm now the chief operating officer, and then I'm the CEO. And all along the way, if I just relied on those unique abilities, my own strength, my internal sort of ability to solve problems, to create solutions, to create the workarounds, there's no way that I could be successful, because the more responsibility you have as a leader, the more complex the organization and the results that you need to achieve, the more you need to rely on the team. One of the things in healthcare is we are surrounded by brilliant people. Think about who goes to medical school. The people that go to medical school are the smartest people in your class. And then they go for 8 to 10 years of education. And then you're surrounded with a medical staff of brilliant leaders. And then you have clinicians who are also going through rigorous programs, and you have just an organization full of smart people. And so you realize that if you have to be the smartest person in the room, if you have to be the one that has all the answers, boy, that organization is in trouble, because you have great, smart people all around you that have experiences, have unique abilities, have expertise that's way beyond your expertise. And so your ability to harness that expertise and really create synergy. So, a leader that is the smartest person in every room doesn't create synergy. Synergy is when the sum of the parts are greater than the whole. And so you want true synergy. You want to create an environment where you can achieve extraordinary things because of the people that are around you. And so I think that's really comes back to the idea that you have to evolve, you have to grow, and you have to learn new skills in leadership to be successful.
That's such a good story, and it kind of reminds me of some of my own personal experiences around leaders wanting to do that transition to the behaviors that you're mentioning, not telling people what to do, but to ask questions. And sometimes that can be so counterintuitive. I mean, I got to where I am by doing the things that got me there, like solving problems at any cost, or creating solutions or workarounds, or just simply executing on projects. Just my ability to execute on things is what got me here. But now you need a different set of behaviors. And like you said, you need to trust on those that are actually doing the work, right? But again, it's so counterintuitive. What was your own personal experience? How did you ensure that you established these new habits? Any recommendations that you may have for our listeners?
Yeah, it's what you say, Cause, is true. It's not easy. You have to evolve, you have to grow. That's where continuous learning is important. But you mentioned the word habits. And so, we all there's been so much written about how do you create a habit, right? And so consistency of behavior creates a habit when you do the same thing over and over and you get feedback to that. You think about world-class athletes, right? And what makes them great? They practice over and over and over. But beyond that, they have people in their lives, coaches, they have they have people that are helping shape them and sort of grow them when they fall or when they make mistakes. And so I think having feedback loops is important as a leader. Being consistent, admitting mistakes, learning from those mistakes, evaluating when you miss the mark, because let's face it, we're all human, we all make mistakes. But being humble enough to learn from those mistakes, to let others point them out to you, to be in an environment where people can give you the kind of feedback that you need to have accountability above you to a board or to an executive leader. I think all of those things are important to creating an environment where you as a leader can continually grow and mature and do lead greater and greater organizations with effectiveness over time. And I think that's the key is feedback, is consistency, and is learning from your mistakes.
Al, that's interesting. And you reference commitment of executives, and you even mentioned the board. I mean, the board is an important part of this. How does that commitment manifest itself for them and for those around them to see it?
Yeah, as we lead in healthcare, and as we think about the complexity of the organizations that we're responsible to lead, and as we think about the results that we hope to deliver and the consistency, it really takes everybody from the frontline staff to all of the providers, to the clinicians, to middle management, to the C-suite, and to the board. And the reason I point out the importance of the board and the CEO and the C-suite is because while you can effectively lead change from anywhere in the organization, right? You can, no matter if you're a frontline person, you can affect change. If you're a middle manager, you can affect change. But if you want an organization to create, to really transform, to create lasting change, it's got to be both top down and bottom up, right? So the people that are closest to the work, who have the best understanding of how what the challenges are, what the problems are, and what the solutions are, they need to be empowered to bring those ideas forward and to be set free to solve those problems. But the only way that that really happens effectively is if the C-suite and the board creates the environment for long-term change and transformation, not for knee-jerk decisions or changes because this month's budget didn't quite hit, or this income this month didn't come in, or we got a report about our quality scores, and so we're going to change the way we do things. I think that when the board and the C-suite is committed to a certain way of doing things, to a principle-based, values-driven approach to leadership, then we can weather the ups and downs that come throughout the course of a healthcare organization's journey. And I think the board then knows that this is a long-term commitment. Yes, we're responsible for results every day, every week, every month, every quarter, but how we get to those results is important. And the board is committed to doing things the right way. And so that, I think, really sets organizations apart to be special, to be able to create consistency of outcomes over time.
You know, it's interesting how you use the word commitment, because there are sometimes leaders share or use the word commitment only, as you kind of referenced, go back to what they feel comfortable with. It's almost like old habits that we've talked about. How do you overcome the frustration and failures that may come with the practice of these new behaviors? And how does that show up? Quite frankly, every day we've talked about how important it is. Every day you do it because that's the practice and that's how it becomes ingrained. How do you overcome that frustration and the failures?
Well, I think that again, it comes down to sort of surrounding yourself with great people who are like-minded in terms of what you're about as an organization, what you're about as a team, how you're going to deliver results, what those results need to look like, and are able to evaluate failures. And after you fall, you get back up, and you have people around you that encourage you, that create an environment where you can take risks, make mistakes, but if it's for the right reason, those things are honored, and you're able to start over and try something else. I think it's just a long-term sort of commitment to doing things the right way, and if you're able to have an environment where that is the case, you're ultimately going to land on success because you have really smart people, you have constancy of purpose, you have clear respect for the people that you work with, and you have an environment that is just primed for problem solving. And so it's true. We typically tend to fall back on our own personalities, right? Because that's who we are from birth, right? We're a dominant leader, we're an introverted leader, we're whatever the case may be. We all go through personality. I've been personality assessed to death over the course of my career. But and so you fall back on those innate sort of personality traits and leadership traits. But I think as over time, as you grow in this environment of performance excellence, you realize that you can evolve in your abilities and your leadership traits and your skills, and you can really become the kind of leader that is necessary to drive the lasting results that our patients, frankly, are expecting from us.
So, Al, let's circle this back to Shawshank Redemption. We started talking about that a little bit. What
Yeah.
are the examples we can see in Andy Dufresne's journey in that story that apply to what we're talking about here?
Yeah, this is one of my favorite movies. Andy Dufresne was a tragic figure in many ways. He was imprisoned for life for a murder he didn't commit, but he didn't let it break him. He continually, every day, did something to achieve a vision that he had for his future, which everything in his life was set against him. So here he finds himself in prison for life, and he has a vision for freedom some way, somehow. And so every day, a little bit more of that wall in his cell gets broken through until eventually he climbs through the worst conditions and it lands on a beautiful beach in the Caribbean. And, the other thing about it is he lifted up everyone around him. And so the people that are lifelong incarcerated for life often become what they call institutionalized. And so when they do get out 30, 40, 50 years later, they don't know how to function in society. And his best friend was named Red in the movie. And Red didn't know what to do when he got out, when he got paroled. But Andy made sure that he learned sort of how to think bigger, how to have a vision. And the best scene for me in the movie is when the two of them meet on that white sandy beach and embrace. Red took a risk, followed his friend, followed his leader, Andy. Andy paved the way for him, and they got beyond the institutionalization. But Andy is an example of that slow obedience in the same direction, that quiet, confident, sort of consistent approach every day to make a small step toward an outcome that he was absolutely committed to, and seeing it on the other side and bringing people along with him, which is just a beautiful thing in the midst of a very difficult, dark story of imprisonment, et cetera. So it's not a movie for the faint of heart, but the principles that I can draw out of it, I think are pretty neat.
Okay, so another watershed you've shared for the lenses. Now I have to issue a spoiler alert at the beginning of the episode so people
Yeah.
know if they see the movie, if they haven't seen it, we're going to tell you how it ends. Okay, so
enough.
Al, any final thoughts you'd like to share with the listeners?
Well, first of all, just want to say thanks for the opportunity. It's a privilege to be a part of the Catalysis team, be a faculty member here. I was fortunate to work with great people in many organizations, and this opportunity to transform organizations. What we do is hard. Healthcare is extraordinarily difficult, and so to bring some hope, I hope today with this conversation to leaders is something that I was hopeful to be able to do. It's certainly something that I took away from Andy and his words that, hope is something that you never want to let die. And so thanks for the opportunity. And I hope that this is encouraging to somebody who is in the midst of difficult circumstances, wanting to see growth and transformation happen. It can be done. And if you surround yourself with smart people, you'll be surprised at what you can accomplish.
Al, we deeply thank you for taking the time, and the concept of lasting healthcare transformation is very important. So we really appreciate that. And as always, we appreciate all of you listening to us. If you have any suggestions for us, you want any more information on this topic or other topics you'd like to hear, just email us at events@createvalue.org. And if you want to learn more about Al and our other executive coaches, please go to createvalue.org/executive-coaching. And as always, please take care of yourself.
Thank you for listening. Visit createvalue.org to learn more about how Catalysis can inspire you to accelerate change in your organization.